Commit to Wealth Nation, welcome to the Commit to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Juan Vargas. Today on the show, we have Brent Kawakami. Brent is a Hawaii native and lives in Dallas, Texas. In 2012, he started investing in real estate by buying, rehabbing, and renting single-family homes in the Dallas, Texas area, and later sold these rentals to move into multifamily. He now has invested in 450 multifamily units throughout Texas, Georgia, and Ohio. Brent has received his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin, a Texas Longhorn.
Yep.
Welcome, Brent.
Hook 'em, man. How's it going, Juan?
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time and making this happen here today. So, Brent, we have met there in the Dallas area at one of the multifamily events, and we had been talking about getting you here on the show for a good while, and finally we have been able to make the time happen. So Brent, tell us a little bit about your background and where you calling us from, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Hawaii, like you mentioned, and I grew up there. I did the whole typical traditional path where I grew up, got good grades, so I went to college. So I went to University of Texas, like you mentioned, got an engineering degree, got a good job, and it's one of those things, sort of just that traditional path type of thing, right? I was never like the entrepreneurial guy that was gonna do his thing like that, but probably a couple years in my career, kind of got the itch to look elsewhere, got into all these other investments, everything from peer-to-peer lending to starting online businesses to whatever, just on the side,
Yeah.
We'll all go through that. We'll all go through that phase, right? And usually
Exactly.
it starts when you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? It's like the entry drug to it.
Yep.
And then, like you said, got into single-family rentals in the Dallas area, and then just slowly progressed into bigger multifamily, which I'm focused on now. So
nice. So, Rich Dad, instead of helping you out, it was kind of like confusing you a little bit. You're all over the place trying to do something, right? Eventually, you settled on real estate and specifically single family. Why single family? Was it because that's what most people do? It was just the easiest path. What was the reason for that?
So, that book's like the red pill, right? So then you go explore stuff. And, if you get into enough podcasts and enough books about that topic, typically it's like, okay, you see these statistics where there's something like 80% of new millionaires are created through businesses or real estate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's pretty, real estate's still that it's the common way for the common man to, build some wealth. So yeah. I went down the path of obviously reading books, podcasts, looking at education groups, and really the single family thing was that was where I was at. I was in my early, middle 20s, with the dollars I had, with what made sense. That was just sort of the traditional path that I kind of was looking at. I hadn't even bought a house for myself yet at the time. So that was really the sort of where it made sense to start with where I was at the time. So that's why I started there.
Yeah. And you pretty much just said it. I think, you're only going to know what you know, right? And so you're going to focus on what's most comfortable for you at the moment, right? So yeah. It was easiest, for you at the moment, maybe to get into a single family, and then, kind of take it from there. So I want to, kind of talk about your single family side, even though this show focuses on multifamily. I still want to talk about, single family and, your first couple of deals, and then we'll kind of, take it from there and fast forward to today and your current focus. So let's just, talk about, briefly your first couple of deals and how those were, how'd you find them and how those turned out to be?
Yeah. So this was back in 2012. So the market was a little different, right? And it was very much the thing in the Dallas area back then was you could buy a 322, all American single family home for that's worth $100K, but it needed $20,000 worth of work. You could buy it for 50 to 60. Then you get a hard money loan and fix it up, and then the whole buy, fix, rent model type of thing. So that's really the kind of the bread and butter deals I did back then, and started build up the portfolio that way. And then I think after a while I kind of had that aha moment where it's like, dang, this is going to take a while to get enough to any kind of scale to build anything. And that's kind of what led me into multifamily.
Okay, nice. So how many single family homes did you end up buying?
I had like 4, I think, at one point.
Sweet. And so how did you start learning about multifamily?
So it was kind of a combination of stuff. So, obviously I'm doing my own self-education all the time. And then I had gotten into some education groups at the time. So that's kind of a big thing here in the Dallas area. So that's kind of how I got into single family. And then I knew multifamily was kind of out there. That was kind of like the natural progression of the real estate investors. So there was that education. And then what ultimately kind of pushed me forward there was I got connected with a local syndicator here, got into his deal, and then progressed from there. And then, as I got more active, found a mentor, found partners, that type of thing. And, just kind of grows organically that way.
I would say it's, if you guys are out there listening and, want to get into multifamily as well, that's one thing that I would recommend is to maybe join a mentoring group of some sort to, it really does help you to get to the next level because you're surrounded by a bunch of individuals that are also doing it, a bunch of like-minded individuals that will propel you to get to the next level. So,
yeah, and then the thing, you and I were chatting the other day about that, especially when you get into multifamily, it's almost like you need that ecosystem that a group's going to provide because you have, obviously you're going to have like the built-in stuff like other investors to invest in your deal, contacts, whether it's, brokers or lenders, those types of things. And then the other part too is like, we're talking bigger dollars here. It's not, at least in my mind, the bigger multifamily, it's not one of these no money, no credit type of things with real estate, And so with that said, I mean, you make mistakes, you got hundreds of thousands of dollars at risk, not, 5 like you would with a single family, So.
Yeah, you're not going to be buying these for 50 grand. At least the ones that you're looking at, you're not going to buy them for 50 grand. I mean, 50 grand might be your earnest money, but you're not purchasing for 50 grand. So
exactly. And I don't want to lose that 50 grand,
No, you don't. So, okay. So you got into a mentoring group and, that's how you were able to start learning more and just, being surrounded by the right people. And so where'd you find your first deal?
So the first multifamily one was as a passive. It had been I met a local syndicator here who had a lot of experience and kind of got in his deal that way. So, and really it was just, word of mouth type of thing. I got connected to him through other contacts. And so I think that's where the value of, especially in this multifamily space, you got to get out there. You got to get, you can't just be behind the computer. You got to go out to events. You got to network with people. And ultimately that's what led me to get into my first deal, just to be quite frank, networking with people. So.
Okay. So it was somebody that you met, through another contact. And so this was a passive deal, like you mentioned. And why did you feel comfortable with this particular deal and this particular sponsor?
So I think, obviously a deal speaks for itself, right? You're going to look at it yourself. You're going to underwrite it yourself. You're going to do the research as far as market size, et cetera. But I think the biggest thing to me was that sponsor, getting to know him, doing your research on him, what is the track record, those types of things. Cause, ultimately, you do business with people, like and trust. And I think that was the biggest factor that to me was what was the driver there. Plus too, the fact that I knew multifamily was where I wanted to go. And so all those stars align kind of in that manner.
Got it. That makes sense. So from there, how did you progress into getting into your own deal?
So continue to, grow, get into more deals. As I determined to be a little more active, again, it was sort of a right place, right time, found the right partner, to help me get into the next deal. And so, I think you wanted to talk about this last one we just closed, which is 114 unit in Atlanta. So we just did that. I was the lead sponsor in that deal. And so, to be honest, it's a slow progression, really. Nothing fancy. I wish there was some secret.
Yeah, really. There isn't. It's just getting out there and actually learning. Yeah.
It's getting out there, doing the work, and learning at the same time.
So I have a couple of different questions for you. You closed on a 114 unit in Atlanta. How long, after you joined the mentoring, group or program, did you close on that deal? And why specifically Atlanta? You're based in Dallas. Why not, try to find something there in Dallas? Why'd you, head out of state to be able to find that first deal?
It's probably a year, I'd say, was the timing. And then why Atlanta? So I'm based in Dallas, right? And so Dallas is kind of, or DFW area as a whole has kind of become this mecca of multifamily apartments. You know, there's some big education groups focused here, and then, you know, every metric, every population, you know, statistic, job growth, et cetera, like everyone knows DFW is a great market. But of course, you know, the problem is everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's
you
good
know,
and it's bad, right?
it's good and it's bad, right? And so,
Yep.
you know, when you look here, it's like deals have gotten just so competitive, and, you know, you got 20, 30 people on any deal that makes sense, that, you know, 100% hard money day one, and people are overpaying and that kind of thing. And, you know, there's still deals here. People are still buying, obviously. But for me, why I went to Atlanta was kind of a, hey, I want to fish in another pond, you know,
Okay.
for one.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then my partner had established had deals there already. So again, it's sort of leveraging the partner as well. So
Okay. So you just mentioned that because of your partner, he had you know, you were leveraging kind of his background there. What other key reasons, you know, drove you to Atlanta? I mean, there's got to be more than that, right?
yeah, so, you know, so Atlanta checks a lot of the boxes that, you know, you typically look for, right? Population growth, job growth, landlord friendly, all those typical things that you see. One of the things that I like about it specifically is the industry diversity, meaning that, you know, if you look at the makeup of like all the different industries that make up that economy, whether it's, you know, financial services or manufacturing or tourism or blah blah blah, right? There's a bunch of them. I like markets that have multiple industries that make up, you know, double digit percentiles of that economy. In Atlanta, you know, DFW is a great example. Atlanta is another great example. The other part I liked about Atlanta as well was, you know, when I started looking for deals there, there's still a lot of stuff that, you know, still has the value add component to it. You still have, you know, properties out there that, you know, haven't been traded 2 or 3 times in the last few years like they have here, you know, where everyone sucked all the value out. You still have a lot of self-management, you know, those types of things. So to me, it reminds me a lot of like what DFW looked like a few years ago, from that real estate landscape. So
That makes sense. Another thing I would mention about the Atlanta market is that they are on the rise as far as the filming industry. You know, outside of, you know, Hollywood and New York, you know, they're on the rise. You know, I would say they're top, you know, top on the list in the country. Like I said, you know, outside of those two bigger markets, so you know that's driving a lot of population growth. You know, a lot of migration out there. Like you said, that the diversification of jobs and you know, so those are all key components that you need to have when looking for a certain market to tap into, right? So
yeah,
yes, so I like that. So
hopefully Amazon HQ goes there too. Selfishly, I'm hoping to go there. So
that is a big possibility as well. You know, they are still on the list, so if it happens, you know, it's just going to be icing on the cake there for you. So
I don't think coming to Dallas.
You don't want them to come into Dallas?
Crazy here.
Yeah, it's going to get crazier than it already is, right? So
now I don't want them here. Go to Atlanta,
yeah.
Please.
Go to Atlanta. That's where you have your deal. That's awesome. So tell us, you know, how'd you end up finding this deal? You know, it's 114 unit. You can't just, you know, send direct mail to one of these kind of, you know, properties or property owners. How'd you end up finding this deal and taking it down?
Yeah. So at least from what I found, you know, those tactics, like you mentioned, sending direct mail to owners, I'll be honest, I don't think that seems to work in the multifamily space, especially with these bigger properties. You have just more sophisticated owners and people who know what they're doing. I like to say that, especially like on that commercial side, all the brokers actually do a good job. You know, they're doing their job. You know, whereas, you know, in, you know, say a single family, you know, anybody can get a license, right? But that particular deal, to be honest with you, it was a traditional listing through a broker. It wasn't one of these like crazy pocket listings that you hear about. It was just it was a normal listing through a broker that got put out there, that I had reached out on, built a relationship with their broker. I did all the traditional things that you would expect, right? You know, you see the deal, you underwrite it, you know, you do research on it, you ask questions, went out and toured the property, you know, walked units, walked the property, drove the area, and ultimately did it that way. That particular deal, you know, we submitted an LOI on it, and actually didn't get it the first time. We were told we came in second on the deal. And it was one of those things where, I maintained the relationship with the broker, continued looking at properties, and the first group couldn't close and ended up coming back to us. Broker came back, are you still interested? Went back, sharpened the pencil more. And that's kind of how I took it down.
Nice. That just goes to show you that, you don't always have to win them right away. Things do happen for you. You just got to make sure that you stay in the game, right? For second and third, opportunities.
Yeah. And I think just to add there, one good thing too, is like when you're going through that whole process of, the upfront due diligence and, ultimately putting your LOI, I think maintaining the relationship with brokers is obviously important, but you need to show that you know what you're doing and you have your ducks in a row, right? Because, if you're on top of things and you've already got a PM lined up, you already got, your term sheet and your loan lined up. You have, we had a seller call, call with the seller prior to that, you portray competence, you portray, you come across like, you know what you're doing and you can close. I think all that helps build the case for why, when a deal falls through like that with another buyer, why someone would come back to you. Cause you've shown that, hey, you're someone or a group that looks like they can perform,
Yeah. And I would even add to what you said is having the right, key partners, to help you take down those deals. If you have guys on your team that have the experience and have the track record of actually taking down those kind of deals, then it'll make it that much easier for you to be able to win a deal and then, move forward on it. Right. So,
yeah.
So tell us a little bit more details on your 114 unit. What was the purchase price? What was the capital raise on that? And, what's your business plan like on that?
Yeah, so that was, it's 114 units, Class C deal. I think it was originally listed for $5 million. We ended up getting it for $475. So the raise on that was $1.3 million. We got a traditional Fannie loan, 80% LTC, rehab included, 3 years IO, all your really kind of your standard lending you'd see on a property like that. The great thing about the property was, so that particular owner, he had bought it a couple years ago, and he really took it to where he put a lot of the CapEx in to fix the bones, as I like to say. So, he put some new roofs on, he fixed exterior type items, structural type things, but he really didn't touch interiors, period. Right, which is the fun stuff you can, you can do.
I know where this is heading. Yeah,
where I can come in and charge more rent, essentially, right? And so, so that was a nice part where it was kind of you come in, all the major heavy lifting is already done, and so now we can put dollars into other spots. The other part of it too was, it had strong, it was a stabilized deal, so it was 92-94% occupied already. It's it's putting off good revenue, so real clean deal where we can walk in. We could do nothing and still cash flow and be fine, which is great. That's the type of deals personally I like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna come in with a big CapEx plan and redo interiors, add amenities. We're gonna do the whole, add a dog park, add a grill area. Resurface the parking lot. Redo landscaping. We're rebranding it, all that type of stuff to really kind of make it a nice community for folks. So that's pretty much the game plan on that guy.
Got it. I want to touch on what you said earlier, and this is actually, you said that the owner had worked on the bones and the structure of the property. I mean, that is great. That he was able to do that for you guys, because you're not necessarily going to get any kind of rent premium on that. The tenants are expecting you to have done those kind of items. They're not going to pay you just because, I did a roof, so I'm going to charge you $50 extra. It doesn't work like that. That's something that's expected by the tenants. So the way that you can actually, increase the revenue is by actually going in there and doing the interior rehabs like you had on this property. So that's where a lot of the value is added, and that's where you're able to make some good profits for your investors.
Yeah.
So
it's a different business model too, right? Because some folks in this, even on the apartment level, you do these larger value add projects where I don't know, the occupancy is like 7%, and you got to clean house and that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you may not cash flow for like a year, right, or two.
Yeah.
by the end, you've done the heavy lifting, so to speak. And so, you're profiting that way. And a lot of people make good money that way too. But for us, it was sort of we like the cash flow from day one model. We like the fact that there's value add still in there. It's just a different, you can make money a million ways in this business, right? So
yeah, there you go. And so I want to say to the audience out there that's listening, you pretty much said that your model and what you prefer is to find a property that's cash flowing from day one, and then maybe do some kind of implementation of an upgrade program, and then you're able to push rents even further. But you got to figure out what it is that your model is going to be, and kind of stick with that game plan. If you're looking for a property that needs a deep value add that's not stabilized, that you need some kind of bridge loan to take it down and refi out of that, then that's fine. But you got to know that this is a different type of game plan that we're dealing with here. So just wanted to add that real quick. The other thing I want to talk about is on this property, how much are you putting into the rehab for each interior unit, and what are you expecting to get on the back end?
Yeah, so the way we looked at it, so we allotted somewhere around $3,500 to $4,000 a door. Now we're going to test it with our PM and see, what works for what are residents going to, be willing to take versus bump, and how much can you essentially get away with, right, without spending too much, right? Mm-hmm. But the nice thing is we actually underwrote it to the in-place rents that they were getting on new leases already. So we were basically assuming no rent bump when we came in. we could do nothing and still make money. But with that said, the way based on where they were under market, we think there's probably at least $50 to $100 an increase per month.
Nice, yeah.
On an upgrade unit, for that 3,500, give or take a door, which is nice because you have that room to play with, right? Like the property next door to ours, they're putting like this 5,000 a door rehab with granite and glass backsplash and stuff, and that's fine. But I think that attests to you got to test the market. You got to know. Exactly. You gotta rely on, okay, what makes sense for this market for what bump I can get, basically. So that's the plan on this property.
Got it. That makes 100% sense. You gotta know what the market is doing, and you can't necessarily over rehab this property, so to speak. So what exactly are you doing to the interiors? You say you're spending about 30, or you're projected to spend about 3,500 for each unit. What does that include?
Yeah, so that's going to be like that Lvt flooring, which is like that nice, vinyl wood look stuff that's real durable. Looks great. We're going to do, fixtures, all those, taking out, the gold stuff and putting, more modern brush nickel type stuff. We're going to resurface countertops, put some new cabinet doors on the front, appliances. So really it's really a bread and butter standard kind of, upgrade program. But for a property like that, so I think the property was built like in the 70s, so everything's original still. So it's a big shift when you do something like that, because you're basically modernizing the property, and for a resident there, it just at the end of the day, right, well, when you walk in, when you're a resident looking to rent a place, that's what catches your eye, right? This is where I'm going to be living. And so that's the plan.
Got it, man. That's beautiful. I love that. So are there any particular, lessons that you learned that maybe my audience can learn from, any kind of mistakes that you came across?
Yeah. So a few things I would say. I think one, so raising money is a big part, right? So I told you we raised 1.3 on this, and you just finished a raise too with your Beaumont. Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
And so we were talking about it before. I think there's obviously a lot of lessons learned there that you can get. And the first one that like you and I were saying was, a lot of people will say they're interested. A lot of people will talk a big game, but at the end of the day, until you get a wire in, you got nothing, right?
I just 100% agree.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? And
yes.
I think that's one. Going in, I mean, it's an obvious thing, but going in, you have to know that, right? And so, I think that's where it comes down to, having a numbers game in terms of having volume of people you're going to, making sure you're following up on. You'd be surprised, that people procrastinate.
Yeah. No, I've come across that as well. So basically, what Brent is saying here is, if you have guys that are committed, before you find a deal, and they say that they're committed, don't necessarily rely on it 100%. I don't know how to say it any better, so it won't sound so harsh. But don't rely on it 100%. Keep going out there and keep networking, keep building those solid relationships, because the guys that will tell you yes right now before you find a deal are sometimes the guys that will not be interested. And then there's guys that you'll meet like later on, and then those guys will be the ones that actually will join you on a deal, and to your surprise. So the whole key here is to keep networking and keep always, if you're a syndicator or if you're like a general partner, to keep networking and keep building those solid relationships. And if you're a passive investor, likewise, keep building those solid relationships with the sponsors, because whenever they come across a good deal, then you want to be able to jump on that as well. So,
I got a few things too on that, on additional to money raise. So, I think to tag along there is when you have an active deal, like you're under contract, you're working through, and you're money raising, it's busy as heck, right? I mean, there's just a million things going on that you're working on. But one of the things I found is that, to tag on what you're saying, that is like one of the best times to expand your network, because you have an active deal and you have an excuse to talk to people, right? It's an initial, foot in the door to conversations with people, and not just passives, right? But it could be passives, it could be contractors, it could be other vendors, because you have a deal, right? You have an excuse to talk to these people. And then as you're networking, because you have an active deal, it's an instant conversation starter, or it's an instant, oh, tell me more about that, right? And so it's one of those things, like you said, as you're trying to raise funds, having that deal also helps you expand your pool while you're doing that, right?
Yeah, and they can possibly be some good investors that get into your next deal, right? So that's the whole purpose, is to keep expanding your network, keep building those solid relationships. You use that this deal as an example, gives you a good reason to go out there and talk to people, and you're actually doing things. You're not just saying you're doing, so that gives you a different level of confidence as well.
Yeah. So a couple other things I think would be useful as lessons learned, just particularly to money raising. I think one thing you'll find, especially with us, so obviously you and I are kind of in the multifamily circle, right? Mm-hmm. And we spend a lot of time networking in those types of groups, right? Whether it's conference or meetup, whatever. One of the things I think I've kind of had an aha moment about is that you need to go outside of those circles and find other folks that aren't necessarily doing what you're trying to do, right? If you're going to like the normal, RIAs or multifamily meetups, inevitably you have a lot of people who are trying to do their own deals, right? They're trying to do the same thing you're doing, right?
100%. 100%.
And unfortunately, the case is, you may have a lot of people on your list, and whether they're actively trying or not, or know they're a good fit for doing that, they're trying to do their own deal. So they need their money for their own deal, right? So that doesn't help you when you're trying to raise funds. And so I think maybe the lesson learned, or the tip for your audience there, is you have to go outside sort of those initial circles, whether it's, I don't know, the country club or the chamber of commerce or the IRA, self-directed IRA groups, or even like, so I've started going out of my initial area, out of Dallas, whether it's in Atlanta or when I go back to Hawaii, right? You got to get outside those immediate circles to find investors. So
I love that you brought that up, and that is fantastic, because I've come across that as well. Like if you go to like a local meetup, for example, it's great. You get to network with a bunch of guys, but what I have found is that a bunch of the guys that join those local meetups are also guys that are looking to do their own deals, which is fantastic, because you get to rub elbows and build those solid relationships with those guys. But if you are looking specifically for passive guys that can possibly be in your deals, then that might not be the best place to kind of go to. So I would add to what you said. Those are great examples. I would add to volunteer at your local, event, you can go to church and really, it sounds kind of harsh that I say this again, that you're going to volunteer just specifically to find investors at a church. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But what I mean is, volunteer at different events, and then, truly try to build those relationships, because, most of the people there, they're not going to be in real estate or multifamily, or going to have the same kind of goals that you have. Right. So, try to get outside of the circle, like Brent said, man. I think that's fantastic advice, man.
You got to get it. You want to be in rooms where you're the only real estate investor,
where you're the expert in what you say. Yeah. And you don't have to know it all. I mean, that's not the whole point. No, you don't have to know it all. And that's why you partner up with guys that have more experience than you do. But you want to kind of, bring them in, so to speak. And so that's great, man. I love that.
No. So that's some lessons learned there on the money raise. I think another one kind of on lending. So, so I told you, we did a traditional agency debt. And we went through a mortgage broker. I think one thing you find when you're in deals like this is once you get in bed with a lender, they have a lot of power, right? I mean, they're the biggest. They're the biggest. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, they're bringing 60, 75, 80% of the funds here. So they wave a huge stick, right?
Right.
So they can dictate a lot of stuff. They can, ask you for, I mean, there's no limit to what they could ask you, right? So I think one lesson learned there, or tip for your audience, is when you get into deals like this, I think it's really valuable to have a mortgage broker involved. And obviously, you're paying them %, but to me, it's well worth it because they're helping you navigate on the front end. What is the right product? What is the right lender? They're doing business all the time, right? So they have those relationships already established. They know, who's doing what type of thing. But then also they play intermediary. They can go to bat for you and fight for you. They can play quarterback and, point guard for all the million things that are going on. So I think that'd just be another sort of piece of advice or tip, is that, a good mortgage broker involved in a transaction like this is worth their weight in gold.
I think there's a lot of guys out there that try to, save some money. Yes, they're going to get a percentage of, putting the deal together. But, really they're going to find the best product and, try to get you the best terms. You can just go settle for any bank that you like, but that doesn't mean that you're getting the best rates. And so it might be costing you more at the end. But 100% agree with what you said, and they're on your team. They want to close the deal as much as you do, but they want to give you the best terms for your specific deal. And not only that, they want to build a long-term relationship. So they're not going to try to just get you into any kind of loan product out there. They're going to try to get you they're truly the best that they can get for that particular product or that particular property. So. Man, that's awesome, man. And you've shared a bunch of great value tips here on this particular property. So hopefully you guys out there listening can pick up a couple of things from what he said. So Brent, I think it's time for our nuggets of wealth, and these are questions that I ask every guest every week, and hopefully they're able to help out our listeners. So we'll get this started. So what key tip or advice would you give to newer multifamily investors that want to get into their first syndication?
So I think the key tip there is, and it's going to sound very cliche, but if you wanted to get into this business that way and you're dead set on being a lead or sponsor, you got to be committed. You got to go all in. You have to be obsessed with doing it. And the reason I say this is because, obviously, you can do this part-time, you can do this, not necessarily where it's, your full focus, but you got to be just tenacious on it. You got to be out there networking. You got to be out there looking for deals. You got to be out there learning. And from what I've seen just with other syndicators and, people who are doing what I'm doing, I mean, you got to be just obsessed with it. To be successful. The people that do well in it are the ones that are just hyper and laser focused on it. They're not dabbling in, well, I just, I think this multifamily thing's, something, right? Or, hey, I'm going to do this. This is just one of the many businesses I'm working on. No, you gotta go all in. And again, it sounds cliche, but I think that's really the biggest tip or advice for someone newer trying to get into it.
Also for your investors, for everybody involved, if you're kind of dabbling into this and you're all over the place, I mean, how are they going to take you seriously? How are you supposed to build your track record? It makes too much sense, So I love that. I love that you said to be tenacious, to be obsessed, to be committed. Those are all the key qualities that you got to have to be able to, be. I mean, you could take down a deal too, but if you want to really get far and further and take down many deals, then you got to have those kind of qualities.
The other part too is, I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, if it were easy, everyone would do it, right?
Exactly,
and inevitably you're going to get punched in the gut. You're going to, you're not going to get the deal the first time, right? You're going to have, partners screw you. You're going to, whatever, right? And so I think by being laser focused and tenacious on that, that's how that's how you stay motivated and it keeps driving you. So
there you go. I love it. What is a good tool, source, or platform that you use frequently that can also help others?
So I got a few. So first one's kind of caveman.
It's all right. It's good.
First one's kind of caveman. So I carry a moleskin notebook with me, just, small deal. And I use it sort of as a to-do list in a sense. Obviously I take notes with it, but if you listen to a podcast called The MF CEO by Andy Frisella, which is real great. If you're easily offended by curse words, don't listen to it. But he talks about this thing called the Power Five, and essentially it's every day you write down maybe the 5 key tasks that you're trying to get done that day. And I don't always do 5, right? It might be 3, it might be 7, but the key there is sort of you have your big rocks that you're trying to accomplish that day, and if you check the box and cross them out, you've already won the day, right? And so it goes back to the whole thing about, it's all about execution, right? And day by day grind. And so as you're checking boxes and crossing out to-dos, that's what ultimately works up to your goal. And then there's something like just inherently, I don't know, that when you see that you've crossed out something on your to-do list that, keeps you honest and keeps you motivated. So that's one thing I do. On the non-caveman side, on the more techie side, I still use, so I use that as a sort of to-do list. I still use, I use an app called Things. And it's kind of a to-do list app, but I use it specifically for if you're into like the getting things done, GTD. Which is another book, where it's sort of quick capture, like, when something pops in your head, and even it may be real estate related. It may be, I gotta pick this up, right? Or just something around. It's a quick capture to just throw it in so that you have a system to where you're not going to forget to do something. So that's one. The other one I was going to mention is, so Facebook Messenger. I use that quite a bit. I know you and I've chatted on it a lot. I like to use that as a way to stay connected with people. And, kind of back to, we talked about raising money before, it's all about maintaining relationships. And, Facebook's like one of the most, I don't know, if you're not on Facebook, you don't exist, right?
Right. Yeah. Then you're a real caveman if you're not on Facebook, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but if you haven't messed with the messenger feature, like, it's basically texts, right? And I text people too, but like, you can drum up conversations directly with people, and and do it on a large scale. And so what I like to do is, and I got this from another podcast, I think it's the Art of Charm. But every once in a while, or every day, or whatever, go through who haven't you talked to in a while, right? Okay, I haven't. When's the last time I talked to Juan? Oh, it's shows you right there. It's been 4 or 5 months. Hey, shoot you a quick text like, hey, Juan was thinking about you. How's it going, man? What's new, right? Or, hey, it's been a while. Just wanted to say hello. Let's grab coffee. That type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great way to stay connected with people. And you got to be genuine about it. But it's a great way to stay in the loop of what's going on with other people, and then also maintain the relationship for down the road, because you never know, right? Maybe they're investor in your deal, maybe they're a future partner, maybe they know someone they want to introduce you to, all that. So,
man, that's a great one. Yes. And the great thing about it is, like you said, it stays saved on there. So you don't have to use, you're pretty much using their servers and their memory banks on that. So that's another great thing. You don't have to use your own. Man, I love that, pretty much staying connected with everybody, and kind of going through the list and seeing who you haven't talked to in a while, and kind of just, reaching out to them again. So, what was the best business advice you ever received?
Best business advice. I think the biggest one I've received, or maybe kind of drummed up from knowing entrepreneurs, is you got to make a sale. And what I mean by that is that, you know, whether you're an investor here and trying to do this business, or even if you just have your own small business, if you don't make a sale, you don't have a business, right? And so a lot of times, you know, especially when you're in their entrepreneurial mindset, you can kind of fake yourself into doing work, you know, and doing things that maybe don't necessarily advance you to making that first sale, you know, and not to say these things aren't important, but, you know, how many people, oh, I got to have a business plan, right? This 20-page document, this is my business plan. Oh, I got to get a website. I got to, you know, get fancy cards designed. I got to get a logo put together. I got to go buy the right equipment before I get started. But at the end of the day, while all that stuff's important and maybe you need that at some point, you got to take the actions to make a sale, right? And those things don't necessarily advance you. So it kind of goes back to, you know, being self-aware and looking at, okay, whatever it is in your business, whether it's maybe it's this investing thing, you know, it's being efficient versus effective, right? What are the effective, you know, the one, you know, if you read the book, The One Thing, right? What is that one thing that's going to advance me to my goal, that's going to make things easier, or, you know, less consuming? And at the end of the day, it's, you know, in your business, what's going to make dollars, right? So that's probably the best advice I've gotten.
Awesome, man. That's great. What book are you currently reading?
So I have a few. Actually, I'm probably not as much of a book person as I'd like to be. I listen to 1 million podcasts at like 2 times speed, but
like chipmunks.
Yeah. So, but I have a few books I've put together. The last one I actually finished was called Purpose, Passion, Profits. Is actually know a few of the guys who co-authored that book. Dugan Kelly, Elijah Vo, Ben Suttles, but it was put together by Kyle Wilson, who is the mastermind behind, if you know, all this self-development stuff. I mean, Jim Rohn is like where it started, right? And so Kyle was the mastermind behind all that. He put together this book with all these co-authors that, you know, it's these little nuggets and stories of, you know, people finding, you know, purpose, finding meaning, and ultimately how that led to, you know, business success. So that's the last one I kind of really finished. The last book that I really liked that I finished was called Never Split the Difference. I think the author is Chris Voss.
Chris Voss.
So he's like a former FBI negotiator. And the thing I like about that is it's really tactical and practical about negotiation. That's probably the first book in a long time that I actually made notes on. I never do that. The problem I have is there's just so much stuff in there. It's like, how do I implement it? You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was good. Couple ones I'm working on now. I'm reading one called Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, by Patrick Donahoe. I've been a client of his since like 2012, but he's a proponent of, if you're familiar with the infinite banking concept, which is a whole different thing. But he's really great about like views on economics and finances and investing and savings. So that's one I'm looking at now. And then the one I have on my Audible is called The Art of Gathering. I'm listening to now. It's like the first book I've ever really seen that talks about like how to organize and create epic events. So I'm really looking at it as to hopefully get some good ideas, talking about how, you know, when you organize meetups and conferences and things like that, you know, what makes, you know, that gathering of people really impactful, and people take away from stuff. So that's the books I'm working on. It's a lot.
Yeah. No, that's good though. You know, you gotta always stay out there and get as much information as you can from books, man. Books are powerful. So definitely love that. Where do you see your business here in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years. You know, to be honest, I'm not like really good about planning long-term like that. I'm really hyper-focused on the near term, to be quite frank, which right now is looking for more deals, but also operating the deal we just closed. I'm really, you know, especially to do good for my investors, you know, I really need to take responsibility and make sure, you know, the deal operates and does well. And so I'm really hyper-focused on that now, obviously. But, you know, to be quite frank, in 5 years, we'll see. I don't have any specific plans.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's good. That's good. I like that. You know, you want to be as focused as you can, you know, on the deal that you have currently. So, and try to do your best that you can. At the end of your life, how do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? So it's a little morbid, man. I'm just kidding. I definitely want to be remembered as a man of God, someone who expressed, godly values in everything I did. I definitely want to be known as a good father, husband, son. I had a pastor once say, when you look at your life and the duties you can do, like 85% of it, any Joe Blow on the street can do that. Another 10% of 15% of that, someone with training or appropriate education that you have could do what you do. But there's really only 5% 5% of things in your life that only you can do. And, those are things like being a good father, being a good husband, that type of thing. So I think that's first and foremost how I'd want to be remembered. And then I think professionally, I want to be known as someone who produced, who got shit done.
There you go. There you go.
There's a lot of people who apologize for the cursing here. But
no, it's good, man.
There's
we all do it, so it's all right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who talk shit, but I want to be someone who does shit. Had my head down and did stuff and grinded. So
man, yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean that's perfect answer. For me, I would say pretty much the same thing. So I'll be echoing what you said. So I love that, man. So yeah, man, I appreciate your time, Brent. Where can Commit to Wealth Nation go to contact you and find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so if anyone, just shoot me an email. My email is Brent, Brent, at hellomultifamily.com. So just shoot me a note. I'm happy to talk shop. This stuff is fun. So inevitably, I love talking to people about these types of things. So yeah, shoot me a note.
There you go. So you guys contact him if you want to shout out to him, and definitely take it from there. So Brent, once again, man, I appreciate your time. It's been fantastic, man. You've gave us a lot of, value bombs here. So, man, I'm sure that my audience, was able to pick up a lot of things, from what you gave us here today. So, I wish you continued success on your journey.
All right. You too, man. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks.